Hello and welcome to my video showing you how to draw the tangle Kivka. Kivka, which this is a very simple one and I will change to a different screen very shortly, was inspired by the Petrykivka art form in Ukraine. It's a culturally important art form that actually started in the small town of Petrykivka, which is about 400 kilometers southeast of the capital of Kyiv. And with the situation that's happened, I wanted to find something that would resonate with the art that is in Ukraine. So let me just change over to a different screen for you, and we will pop into getting you to be able to tangle on the my new tangle Kyiv. Okay, so you can see I've done it in black and white here. Let me just move this to the side because I just want to show you, and this is very simple. I don't do complicated videos. So here are some examples of Petrykivka. You can see it's very floral. This one is absolutely beautiful. It looks like lots of flux and it's very flowing. There's a lot of flow within that. And there's this one. Now, much of Petrykivka art form is this floral. It's non-representational, so very similar to Zentangle in that non-representational. It's representational only in the fact that they are as shapes and things that we recognise as flowers, but they aren't any specific flowers. You will also see that there's elements like this where it's something called like a half onion. So if you imagine cutting an onion in half, you've got all the rings. So you have that form there. And this sort of flux flow is very similar in much of the art form. Go and Google Petrykivka because there's lots of information there. So Petrykivka art was first something that was done to decorate houses, on the walls and the houses, and then it's developed into a culturally important art form and is created by many people there, particularly in the village or town of Petrykivka. In 2012, the Ministry of Culture of Ukraine recognised Petrykivka painting as part of the heritage of Ukraine, which, you know, who would have known that? And then in 2013, UNESCO, which is the United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organisation, put Petrykivka art on the list of intangible cultural heritage of humanity. So that's how important Petrykivka is. So where did I get my inspiration from apart from that? I was Googling and I came across this picture. This isn't my artwork, okay? This was off the internet. And I thought, yes, this can be a tangle that can be repeated. And it's got a lot of potential and possibilities. Okay, so let's get going with Kyiv. Okay, so I've got a simple white tile here. Let me just move this out a little bit here. Okay, a simple white tile. I am going to do this in black. And I'm going to start off by, I've got a 0.5. Now, this 0.5 is running out of ink a little bit now, so it's not a huge fat line. I'm getting my words muddled today. So I'm just going to show you how to draw one or two Kyiv. So I'm going to start, we don't start with dots and a border, so it's a very free-handed tangle. And I start by drawing like a horseshoe shape. You can see I don't make it very big. Let's just make that there. So I'll draw a horseshoe shape. And then I'll do a zigzag in here. So I go zigzag, zigzag, zigzag. And you don't have to be exact. And at first, you know, you might think, oh my gosh, what's it going to end up like? And then we ink it in. One thing with Kyiv that makes it a little bit different from many tangles is that it is a very graphic form in this version anyway. that we use a lot of inking in, and I really like how that looks. Things. So I would always say when you start learning a tangle, do it in black. Do it in black and white to start with, and that will give you a good grounding. I think it's always nice to do it that way. And so that's the first part of Kivka. Okay, let me turn that light up a little bit. And now we're going to pop some petals. So I'm going to come down to round about the center here, and I'm going to pop a petal, but you can see I don't let it touch that first little bit that I've done, which looks like a bit of a chopped onion, doesn't it? I'm then going to add petals either side. So I'm going to start one here and bring it round and tuck it in. And I'm going to do 3 of these. It doesn't, you know, I haven't been exact about this. There is no exactness. And I'm going to do the same on the other side. And you can see all of them sort of hover around the edge of that first sort of center of what now looks like a flower. Okay. I'm now going to do the same that I did here, which is the zigzag going in there. And again, there's no exactness, and you might think, oh my gosh, what does this look like? But when we get to doing the inking in, it gives a sense of, it looks like you've drawn with a white pen. And this video is going to be all real time. There's no sort of, I don't do any delays in the recording. I think it's always nice, isn't it, to have something where you can just tangle along with the person doing the video in real time. So as I said, I'm using this 05 partly because, you know, you can draw the outer lines with a finer pen, a 01, or a PN or something like that. But I'm using this 05 because I can. And I also knew that it has enough of a nib to do the inking in. And take your time with the inking in. Really get it as solid colour as you can. You know, some people go, oh, there's lots of inking in. I absolutely love inking in. You know, it's just that time to have this lovely little repetitive backwards and forwards movement with your hand that allows the ink to create that density. You know, when I'm teaching classes, I often get asked, how do you get it so dense? I get lots of lines. Take your time and try not to do it all very quickly. So do it one little bit at a time. And I find this, rather than going backwards and forwards with big strokes, do it with small little strokes. And then you will find that you don't have those gaps appearing and things. So, as I said, Kyiv for me was about the sort of graphic form that it has. And so I'm just going to, hoping my camera is wobbling a little bit. I apologize. And I think my camera holder is sort of resting on the table, which is wobbling a little bit. So I will try not to make it wobble so much. It's all very technical here, you know, and things. And that's the thing, you don't have to make things technical. For me, sharing this with you is about giving you this tangle and saying, there you go and play with it, go and play with it and enjoy doing this. So there, I'm coming up to my last petal. And can you see how those bits that you did the zigzags on suddenly look like you've used a very fine white pen and you've created these little chinks in the top of the petal. It also gives, surprisingly, it gives a a sense of fullness to the petals just by creating those little lines. It's a bit like adding hatching, but not in a hatching style. Okay, I'm just filling in some of those little bits of black there. Okay, so that's the first part of a Kivka shape. What do we do now? We add a sort of stalk. And again, nothing is going to be touching with Petrykivka art. You don't get any line crossing any other line and things. So I'm going to start here, and it really doesn't matter where you start this because it's a very forgiving tangle. And I'm going to put a very soft S shape. I'm going to do a tethered aura. That means I'm going to start at the point, bring it out a little bit, and then tether it in again. So you've got point to point, but it gets wider in the center. And again, I'm going to ink that in like so. Okay. And that makes the first sort of stalk of this Kivka shape. But I'm going to add another one. And you can put it on the outside or the inside, it really doesn't matter. So I'm going to do all of that. It doesn't have to be exactly the same. There's no exact. And I'm going to do another tethered aura. And I'm going to ink that in. I don't know whether you can hear, I've got a clock in here. It's actually resting on my window ledge. And it has this real tick-tock sound. And I'm not sure whether you can hear that on the video, but it's actually really restful. You know, if I'm tangling here, sometimes I have an audio book on, occasionally a little bit of music or the radio, but oftentimes I tangle without anything, and it's just that silence. So we've got the stalk. Can you see how it's beginning to come together? And now we add what I suppose would be sort of flux shapes that go up this stalk. And I start down the bottom, and I start with a small one. It's a little bit different than maybe you would draw a leaf, because oftentimes leaves are bigger at the bottom. But with this, I start off small and I get them a little bit bigger. And I'm going to ink these in as I go along. So, and you can do these however you want. If you want to make them a little bit more chubby, make them chubby. If you want to make them a little bit longer and finer and flowy, make them exactly that. There's a lot of freedom in this. I love being able to encourage people to find their own place with a tangle, you know, explore it and play with it. Have fun with it. And this, so you can see, you can make sure you keep your hand away from the inked in bits, because at first they're going to be pretty wet. And oh gosh, you know, many times, not necessarily with this tangle, but other tangles, I've gone and plonked my hand on top of a tangle as I tangle something else, and then I've realized I've smudged because I haven't given it quite enough time to dry. Micron ink dries pretty quickly, but just be aware of it. Can you see how I'm gradually getting bigger with these? So as I say, just be consciously aware that there's a lot of ink going down here. And so there we have. I'm going to do one more because I can fit one more in here, and I'm going to take this one up here. You see, it's just a little bit bigger than the one before. And that, you know, that's not set in stone. If you haven't got room for a bigger one, don't put it in. Do a slightly smaller one. You will still get the same sort of impression. There we go. Okay, so I'm just going in and filling in, dabbing my nib of my pen into any areas that maybe aren't quite black enough. because we've done that on one side. I'm now going to do it on this side, and obviously I haven't got quite as much space on this side, have I? Turn my tile just because I don't want to put my hand on that ink bit, so I'm adding one in here. An alternative to, if you have ink there, is to use another tile or a piece of paper and just cover it over, and then you can rest your hand on that whilst that is drying. And I frequently do that. So either turn your tile, if you can draw these sort of leafy flux shapes upside down. That's a task, isn't it? Drawing upside down. Maybe, I've just thought maybe that's something I'll experiment with in general tangling, which will be interesting. That'll be a good brain workout. Okay, so you can see these, as you can see, I'm going to end up with a little space at the top here. So, you know, when I said we get bigger and bigger and bigger, when you've got spaces like this, then you can pop a smaller one in. It's absolutely fine. And there we go. Might do another tiny mini one in here. Okay, so you've got the beginning shapes of it, pretty much all. The last thing that I do is at the top here, you want to look like it's got little stamens coming out, or it's bursting forth with joy. So I've done a little tiny flux shape, another one, and I make these a little bit more skinny, and I sort of feed them over like that. So I do one in the middle and two either side, but again, if you wanted to do more or less, that's absolutely fine. Go that way and like that. And that, my lovely tumblers, is a Kivka shape. Okay, so how do you start putting them together? There's so much freedom in this. You can put the next Kivka shape wherever you want. So I'm going to turn my tile this way. So I'm going to point my flowery shape up this way. So I'm going to start off with my horseshoe shape, add in my zigzags, fill it in. And once you start doing this tangle, you may find that it becomes quite addictive. And I think because that happens because it has a very simple form, and you get this lovely repetitive action of filling in with the ink, which sort of is one of those, I'm very keen on repetitive line drawing, so that allows our brains to settle and into that calm space. So I'm going to add petal shape, petal shape, petal shape, and I'm going to add another one up there. You can see they sort of get a little bit smaller as I go on, and the same on the other side, like so. And I'm going to add zigzags all the way around, turning your tile to make it easy for yourself because your hand won't go all the way around that way. Okay, and again. Okay, and now I start inking in. And you know, when you're doing the inking in, just take time to focus on what you're doing. You know, clear your mind of all the worries. And I suppose with Kyiv, yes, it's been inspired by Ukrainian art form. And I have to admit that maybe I wouldn't have explored Ukrainian art if the awful situation wasn't ongoing. please do consider going and Googling Ukrainian art, because it's not just painting, it's ceramics and embroidery as well. And there is so much inspiration there. And I think recognizing that culture, recognizing that we need to respect and honor that creative culture is very, very important. And I don't want to get too deep about that situation. We all have our own thoughts and things. Now, the first time I taught Kivka actually last weekend, and in a Tangle for Ukraine fundraising event, and was able to raise £2,714, which is, off the top of my head, I have to remember, I think it was $3,566 is the equivalent, which has been donated towards the Disaster Emergency Committee for Ukrainian help things. So it's the generosity of tanglers. I think it's also important to value ourselves in all this as well, and know that we can do something very positive in this situation. Okay, so I have filled those petal shapes with ink. So where am I going to put my stalk bit? Well, I'm going to start it on the other side now. And you can start it absolutely anywhere. You can bring it down here, bring it up there, but I'm going to start it here and I'm going to bring it down into there. Okay. And you've got so much freedom with this. Okay, so I'm going to bring my tethered aura, oops, which has gone a bit wonky there, and add the ink in. So very logical, clear steps of how to create Kyiv. Okay, and I'm going to add in my second stalk here. You can see this isn't anywhere near as big, and it's a little bit skinnier, and that's fine. And now on either side I can start adding my flux leaf shapes. You know, get them tumbling out over the side. You know, if your pen wants to take you in a direction, let it go and see what happens. Ooh, and that's going to go skinny across there. And I'm going to do a little one in here just to fill the space. Okay. I'm going to do the same on this side. And try not to touch. You can hollybore this, but I would be cautious about hollyboring and not actually allow the lines to touch, and to maintain this sort of simple graphic form of this tangle. That's why I say it's a little bit different to many other tangles. And you know, when I'm doing my teaching, or whether I'm recording something like this, I can just enjoy it. I'm enjoying doing this as much as you are. And you're literally getting, this is Jo tangling with you and bringing that round. So you can see how it grows very, very organically. I mean, organic can be that it looks like something organic, like a plant, and this does. And it can also mean that it grows, it develops on the tile in an organic fashion without any planning whatsoever. True Zentangle method fashion. no planning. I just knew that I was going to share Kivka with you. Okay. And that's about it for this one on these leaf shapes. Okay. And I'm just going to add those exuberant stamens out at the top. And this gives it, isn't it amazing how adding something like this actually gives it some life and movement as they pop out on the side. Okay, so that's 2 Kivka, and you can keep doing these. You can keep adding them in and developing. Oops, I'm going off the screen. Developing this style. Now, one thing that I have added is that if you've got a space and you think, well, I would only fill a small Kivka, what you can do is just add in a stem, like so. Okay, so we know what that is. So we've done a tethered or a stem. And I might add another one. You can do this singly or with a double. It really doesn't matter. This allows you an awful lot of artistic, creative license. Okay, so I've done a stem there. And now I'm going to just add. So this is sort of associated with Kivka. It's a part, sort of a half Kivka, isn't it? But it's great for filling in spaces where maybe you couldn't fit a whole sort of floral Kivka. And it fills the tile with movement and flow. And I think that is one of the joys of drawing this tangle, is this movement and flow that you get. Okay. And bring it all the way up there, like that. Whoops. Okay, and I'm going to do the same over this side. So start off with a small one. And you can feed them out all the way along. Just that lovely repetition. The more you do, the more you want to ink in. And I really, really, really like it in black on white. Petrykivka art is by nature usually very colourful. And I think I have a sense of respect by doing it in this simple form. Respect for the creators, the artists, the Petrykivka artists, by starting off in this lovely true Zentangle fashion of not having to worry about the colours we use or the media we use, simple black on white. And the other thing, there we are. So can you see how gradually you can add these in? The other thing that makes Kivka a little bit different is on this version, I don't add any shading whatsoever. So that is your basic Kivka. So, you know, there's steps of the Zentangle method that don't cover with this, and that's absolutely fine because I can add some more in here if I want to. Now, I'm going to show you some examples. So I'm just going to move that one to the side. So this one you can see, actually I'll bring that back. You can see I've made it a little bit smaller. And this one I used one of the grey pens, one of the light grey pens, and you can see there's a little bit of a flow there. So what else can you do with Kivka? Let me move this over here. I've got some examples here. So here are some examples to sort of hopefully inspire you. On a tan Zendala, using purely brown pen, and then I've added those extra little part Kivkas in white jelly roll. There, let's just make that a little bit bigger. Okay, and what I did, can you see I've added a few little dots there? That's in gold jelly roll. I just dabbed them just add them on. And if I get the point pencil and point here, if you look here, you can see I've actually used a grey, I think that was a grey jelly roll, just to accentuate the divisions between these petal lines. You don't have to do this, but it's just another option that will make the petals more defined as individual petals. Let's move that one. This one I absolutely loved doing. And this is purely white jelly roll, Sakura white jelly roll, on a black tile. And if you look here, can you see I've hollyboard this little bit, but you know, when I said don't touch it, I literally have kept a gap between so it doesn't join in, and that gives it a little bit of more graphic sort of impression. So I think I used jelly roll 8 and 10 for this one, and I really love it in black. The other thing is no shading or anything like that. And I don't know whether you can see on screen, what happens with jelly roll is you get a sort of mottled effect, and it gives it an aspect of looking like it has got some shade. This one, this is on an ATC. We don't see many of these tiles very often. They're like credit card shape. So you can see, again, I've tangled a little bit smaller. So micron 01 in blue and in red. And I really, really enjoyed doing that. And again, no shading, but I really like that. And with these little bits, you get lots more flow going. You can see I've tucked that in around the edge there. And this is again different. Okay, so this is on a phi tile. So I drew the Kivka shapes and I didn't ink in the flower shapes. I have inked in the stalk shapes, and I haven't done the flower shapes or the flux, and then I've just added some simple graphite shading, and that works really well. And then finally, let's get you this one. I kept this one open again, and with this one I used some Prismacolors just to fill in the colors around the edge. So you have a huge amount of possibilities and opportunities with this tangle Kivka, and I look forward to seeing what you tangle, what you create, and please, when you do them, please hashtag them with Kivka, and I look forward to seeing what you create. Thank you very much.